This is Defiant's daily dispatches for the Defiant. Today, we're going to be talking about how Donald Trump's secret prisons are being exposed, and some of them are getting shut down. First, today, we're going to talk about the watchdog probe that's been opened into the former DHS secretary for the suspicious purchasing of warehouses related to these secret Donald Trump prisons. It shows that investigators are zeroing in on misconduct, and it is surely going to delay this plan from going forward. And then we've got developments in one of the towns in Georgia where one of these facilities was going to open, and where local officials and a community stood up in protest. And then tonight, we have developments related to one of the most iconic immigration facilities that's been stood up in the second Trump administration, known as Alligator Alcatraz. And we have a very good news story to bring you, a personal news story about something that has happened at that facility. Stay with us and we will talk about it. But before we dive into tonight's show, we want to start with something important, because many of you already know about our efforts in this space. Defiance.org has teamed up with the Save America movement and Project Saltbox to launch something called GTFO ICE. Get the facilities out ICE, a nationwide rapid response network built to alert communities when new ICE detention facilities are being planned in their towns. And tonight, after everything we've seen over the last several months, from warehouse detention camps suddenly appearing across the country to communities scrambling for answers after deals were already signed by the federal government behind closed doors, we're ramping up that effort again in a major way. Because what we've learned is simple. These facilities move fast when people don't know they are coming. But when communities organize early and they ask questions, and they pressure local officials, and they show up together, they can fight back. And as today's episode will show, it works. And tonight, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why that work matters. We're going to talk about the latest developments. But first, I want you to take a look at this.
Across America.
For months now, ICE has been quietly buying warehouses around the country.
Neighbors go missing.
Close to 75,000 people arrested by ICE had no criminal record.
People go in,
sleeping on the floor, little to no food.
And profit comes out.
Core Civic and Geo Group are cashing in on mass deportations.
But we can stop it before it starts.
GTFO ICE. It's a nationwide rapid response network to stop ICE prison camps.
We know the playbook.
Rumors of an ICE detention facility are being met with some big pushback.
Public debate erupted over the proposed facility.
So we built the network.
Let's use this data to alert Americans about these facilities, to crowd cancel them.
To show up.
Hundreds of people pouring out of the surprise city council meeting.
To shut it down.
ICE detention center has been scrapped.
And to say,
to ICE, get the out.
Let me also say something else about this effort, especially as our three organizations prepare to ramp up actions around the country while the federal government is on its heels when it comes to these secret facilities. And that's this. 2 weeks ago, hackers tried to breach our systems to steal our sign-up lists for this effort. They, or at least some of them, took information about people who signed up. And then they sent harassing emails to those people saying that their information was shared with federal law enforcement, as if it's a crime to oppose Donald Trump, as if it's a crime to dissent when this administration is opening prison camps in our communities without our consent, as if it's a crime to exercise your First Amendment rights. So let me just say this. First of all, to the people who were behind those attacks, your day will come. We have not forgotten. We are working with the appropriate investigators and authorities, and we will not tolerate the naked and pathetic effort to intimidate patriotic Americans. Second, we're not going to let anyone shut us up. This work continues, and we're going to fight like hell. So if smug little cyber trolls think they can trample on the First Amendment rights of the American people, they've got another thing coming for them. And here's the thing. They know they are losing, which takes me to our first story tonight. And I'm joined by my co-host today, Maritza Georgiou from the Grounded podcast. Maritza, it's great to have you, my friend. And I'm excited to talk about this first story because tonight we're going to be talking about something that came through the wires that brought a smile to my face. And I'm sure it did for you because you have been so invested in this story. And that is new developments around the expansion of these ICE prisons, including an investigation that's been launched into former Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Since her assignment, as we know, Noem has mostly stayed out of the spotlight, but a breaking Wall Street Journal investigation revealed that the Department of Homeland Security's own Inspector General is now probing that warehouse detention program that she helped spearhead alongside her top advisor, Corey Lewandowski. According to that report, investigators are now auditing the roughly $38 billion warehouse detention initiative, including how those contracts were awarded and why properties were purchased above list price. The Wall Street Journal reports that under Noem's leadership, ICE bought 11 warehouse properties in just a matter of months, and in many cases paid between 11 and 13% above market value. What was really telling, though, is that many of the buildings purchased were not properly zoned for detention, didn't have functioning plumbing capable of supporting thousands of detainees. They weren't ready for this, even though there were properties out there that they could have purchased that had those capabilities. And in total, nearly 50 contractors tied to the effort have reportedly already been paid $1.7 billion since Donald Trump returned to office. The investigation is also giving a clearer picture of who benefited from those contracts. And according to the Wall Street Journal, several companies that had never previously worked in immigration detention somehow received these massive federal deals tied to the warehouses. One contractor, KVG LLC, reportedly received $113 million in taxpayer money, despite having no history in immigration detention operations, but rather in supporting ships and ports for the U.S. Coast Guard. Another company, SK2, was reportedly formed in Puerto Rico less than a year ago and later received a $6 million DHS contract despite never previously having worked with the federal government at all. So, Maritza, when I saw this story, I thought of you, and I wanted to ask, because you have been covering this now for quite a while. You've been going to these towns. You've seen these warehouses up close. Were you surprised by any of these findings? And what do you think the Inspector General is going to uncover as they dig in?
No, I'm not surprised, Miles, for many reasons. I went to Social Circle, and the one thing I'll say is I think that maybe there is an underestimate happening, because when I went to Social Circle, Georgia, and we went and saw that warehouse in person, I mean, it's massive, over 1 million square feet, right? Completely empty, brand new, never been used. And at that time, it was sold for 5 times the property's last assessed value. I think if I remember it right, it was purchased by this PNK LLC, which has Russian ties, and it was purchased for more than $29 million. PNK purchased it for more than $29 million, and then the United States federal government purchased it for $128 million. So, I mean, an insane amount of money. The other thing that really came up for me, I spoke with somebody who was very, very familiar, intimate with acquiring the federal leases, federal properties with the United States government. And they said that, listen, when you do this kind of thing, you go through General Services Administration, GSA. They handle almost all of the leasing, acquisition, and selling for all these federal agencies. Well, this didn't happen. It went through DHS. So that was a very big red flag for this person as well. And then the other part is that the federal government generally leases, they don't purchase. So that was the other big red flag. And I actually wrote the Inspector General to ask about some of these questions. They never wrote me back, but I'm getting over it. I'm not bitter.
They tend to keep their cards pretty close to their vest in the Inspector General's office, but I'd agree with you that there's a lot more smoke here than even the average American has seen. And it was already very suspicious. I'll tell you, as a former DHSer, I found it very unusual and, borderline criminal that the secretary had implemented a policy at the start of her term to review any contract in DHS over $100,000. Just to give people a sense of scope there, we're talking about a $60 billion a year organization. If the secretary's office is saying they have to approve every contract over $100,000, it basically grinds the whole department to a halt. And guess what? It did. In fact, there were tornadoes that ripped through middle America, and frontline first responders didn't even have access to the tornado tracking tools they normally use. Why? Because the FEMA contract had lapsed, because it was sitting somewhere in Secretary Noem's office. But the big question that has hovered over this is, why did they want to put a pause on those contracts? Was it really to cut waste and fraud and abuse? Or was it to get leverage? Was it to make sure contracts were steered towards allies? I've got to suspect that that's the type of thing the Inspector General is going to look into and hopefully answer. But this is not good news for Noem. It's not good news for Corey Lewandowski. And it's also a message to the other people in other departments and agencies doing Trump's bidding, engaged in potential corruption, using their positions of power potentially for profit. Watch out, because it's going to come back and bite you in the ass.
Yeah, and I think that what is interesting is, like you said, it was mandated that Kristi Noem approve all of these, which means she approved all of the purchasing over these federal warehouses, which again really shouldn't be through her office. It should be through GSA. So many questions here, and a lot of smoke, like you said, Miles, a lot of smoke.
And probably still some smoldering fires. But you know what? Like I said at the top end, if these folks continue to go forward, they are going to be met by very resistant communities. And we're going to talk about one of those today that you already mentioned, Maritza, which is Social Circle, Georgia. And that fight has been a major flashpoint in this debate. Many of you probably remember that town, Social Circle, Georgia, and perhaps even its city manager, Eric Taylor, who went viral for one of the most defiant moves we have seen since this secret prison project started. And that was, even after this facility was approved in Social Circle, Georgia, even after DHS was starting to prepare to move in and use it, the city manager, Eric Taylor, said no and decided to shut off the water supply to that proposed ICE detention facility. And tonight, there are major new developments in that battle. We go now to WXIA TV for the latest.
The city of Social Circle has filed a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security and ICE, claiming the proposed mega detention facility in their community would overwhelm local infrastructure and also violate federal law. 11 Live's Stephanie Haynock has looked at that lawsuit extensively, joining us now from the newsroom. Steph, the city asking the court to put a stop to this.
Yeah, that's right. Basically, Cheryl, this lawsuit, Social Circle says ICE and the Department of Homeland Security rushed to secure and convert this warehouse into an ICE facility and didn't do proper review of possible shortcomings that could negatively impact lives of residents in Social Circle. Now, the community now joins other places that are already suing ICE for similar concerns, including Portland, Oregon, San Diego County, California, and Washington County in Maryland. For months now, though, we've known residents of Social Circle have made their disapproval of ICE's new addition to their community clear, protesting against the big plans of the facility to open this June. According to the lawsuit, town leaders say DHS and ICE failed to study the environmental and community impacts before moving forward with the project. Now, back in February is when this commercial warehouse was purchased to be converted into the immigration detention center that would house 10,000 people. And the lawsuit officials argue this mega facility could cause major strain on water supplies and also sewage systems. A Social Circle says the population of the town is around 5,000 people right now, and that the facility would triple that number. The lawsuit also mentions concern of safety for students that attend an elementary school less than a mile away. Now, Social Circle is asking the court to block construction, and so the facility could be put on hold depending on which way this lawsuit swings. If it is deemed a public nuisance, which under Georgia law is anything that causes hurt, inconvenience, or damage to another. I'm Stephanie Haynock, 11 Alive News.
All right, Steph, thanks. I know we'll keep
And joining us now is Social Circle City Manager Eric Taylor himself. Eric, it's fantastic to have you here on the program. Thanks for taking the time, my friend.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Let me toss you the first question, and then I'll throw the mic to Maritza, which is, what can you tell us about this lawsuit? And ultimately, what do you hope happens here?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to the very last statement that was made by in the report you have the lead in, and it's all about inflicting hurt or inconvenience to the community. And what's more damaging or has the potential to inflict hurt or inconvenience to a community more than a 10,000 bed detention center that effectively triples the population overnight? That's larger than the largest prison in the country, and they're moving ahead without doing all the assessments required under the law and with zero consultation with local government. So, I mean, it seems to meet all the definitions of Georgia nuisance violations and Georgia nuisance law, not to mention the Environmental Protection Act and Administrative Procedures Act. The federal government does not get to skip their required reviews that were established by Congress just because they deem a project to be urgent.
Oh, Maritza, I think you're muted.
There we go. When I was down there, Eric, and interviewed you in February, and we went to that facility, I mean, it was completely empty. It was down to the studs, like industrial beams inside. And I know they said at the time that they were hoping to get it built out for 10,000 people within 60 to 75 days, which seemed like a very large feat to me at the time. And I know you and I talked about that. So what is the progress update? Have they started work on that, or is it still in limbo since you went and locked the water box?
There's been zero activity over there. The only people who are over there are the security guards who are trying to keep people off the property. But there's been no progress or action going on over there at all, ever.
Zero activity. Eric, that strikes me as the operative words for other communities to hear when they hear this story, which is that it does make a difference if people stand up and do something. I mean, we get told all the time in the face of these things, go protest, show up at the city council meeting, send the email, and folks feel so cynical that those things don't make a difference. But every community where one of these things has been stopped, it's because folks like you and folks in the community actually said, no, this is not okay. This is not the way things are done in this country. And it has worked. What lessons do you think other municipalities around the country need to take from this? What would your message be to towns that are facing other examples of federal overreach?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you have to have the courage to do what's right and to listen to what your constituents want. This is a fairly conservative community. They went 73% for President Trump in the last election, but yet it has unified this community. They're absolutely unified against this coming in. And, it's incumbent upon city leaders everywhere, whether you're an elected official or a staff person like me, to, at the end of the day, always do what's right for your community.
Eric, I know when we talked, I mean, you said you were going to explore every option you had, including possibly legal options, and here we are today. One thing, though, that I don't think people quite understood is, in addition to this tripling the town's population and being, the largest detention center in the U.S.,
right?
Your city was counting on that building when you approved that building to be a distribution center. You were counting on $1 million in tax revenue based on that permit approval. And if I remember right, your budget's about $8.5 million. So what has this meant? I mean, even without them going through with the construction, that's money just left on the table for Social Circle. Like, what has that meant for you? Are you possibly pursuing damages?
Well, we'll leave it up to the courts to decide what the remedies are at the end of the day. We'll be happy if they just pack up and leave and go somewhere else, or abandon the whole concept altogether. But as far as the building itself, people have to remember that facility, when it was built and approved, it was not a very popular project to begin with. But it did not require any kind of city council action other than a couple of variances, as it was already a zoning by right under Georgia law, as it was already an industrial zoning. And so when we thought this was coming in, it was when there's a lot of supply chain issues going on with coming out of COVID, and during the approval process, we thought we were going to be getting about $1 million a year between us and our city schools. We're unique in Georgia, and we have our own independent school system for a city of this size, which is great. It's a crown jewel of the community, but that's a lot of money, and it's something that everybody depended on. And now not only is it going away because it's being taken off the tax digest, now we're going to have to compete with the federal wages that the workforce will be paid.
Eric, can I ask you about the human toll here? Of course, the city and the community have been concerned about what this would do to infrastructure, to their families, to jobs, all of it, the impact of the federal government parachuting in and taking control. What have you also heard from folks just about their feelings of having a facility like this that could have easily been an Amazon warehouse, instead being a place to traffic human beings in and out, regardless of politics? Has that been something that has struck a chord with folks?
Yeah, it all depends on who you talk to. There are a lot of people who bring up the human toll, and of course that does play in the back of our minds at all times with that. I mean, it was not built for this type of activity over there. But for us, at the end of the day, from a city government perspective, we try to stay above that argument and just focus on what's important here, and stick to the facts. And the facts are that it's not the right fit for Social Circle, and no matter what you do, you can't make a community process 1 million gallons of water and sewage a day when you only have capacity for 500,000.
I'm wondering, Eric, I know you went over and blocked the water box, and I saw a clip of you on another network saying, when someone asked you, well, can you do that? And you said, well, I don't know, I did. Yeah. Have you heard anything? I mean, I loved that clip, by the way, but have you heard
That's great.
From the federal government? Has there been any pushback from them or any kind of challenge on that?
No, and look, that news came out about a month after they had already known about it. We did when we put the lock on the water meter over there, it was done just a couple of days after we confirmed that they had indeed purchased the site. And we were concerned that we hadn't heard anything about the project, and had zero communication with DHS up to that point. And we weren't very confident that behavior would change. And so we did something that we felt like we had to do, and not only to preserve our water and sewer supply, but also to make a statement that they need to call us. And eventually we did end up having one conversation with them, and I don't know if it was a result of that action or not.
But no other follow-up conversations. No other follow-up conversations. That was it.
No, the one meeting that we did have with them, one of the takeaways from that meeting was that they agreed to have their engineers talk with our engineers, because it was pretty clear to me in that meeting that whatever engineering studies that they think they did were not engineering studies, and there were some fundamental flaws at best. And so we had actually had a second meeting scheduled with them for first part of April that got canceled when Secretary Mullen came in and decided to do a review of processes across all of DHS. And so as far as I know, we're the only community that they actually called to state that things were going on pause. And I think that was only because they had to cancel a meeting with us.
Well, Eric, we look forward to tracking the latest developments, seeing what happens with the lawsuit. But let me just say, It's a message for folks that work in public service jobs all around the country. You can do something bold. You can do something, dare I say, ballsy and defiant, and have a very, very real impact. So we'll eagerly follow along what happens next. And just want to say a big thank you for speaking up and standing up. It's contagious.
Thank you. Do the right thing always.
Eric Taylor, city manager in Social Circle, Georgia. Maritza, I love that story. I mean, and this is such a great, I don't want to say it's the end of the story, but it's such a great development to see amidst all of this, and how actions of people like Eric Taylor have ground this $38 billion thing basically to a halt. It's super impressive.
You know, Miles, I mean, he just, after I did an interview with him in February, again, I was reporting for the Save America movement down there in Social Circle. I talked to so many people on the ground. And after I talked with him in person, I mean, to think about the big, you know, David and Goliath situation that this was, and the Goliath being the federal government against this tiny little town of Social Circle, Georgia. It's a city, I should say. And this one city manager, you know, when I talked to him, he told me like this was the twilight of his career. Basically, he went there to go, you know, finish out his career on a high and try to do some good for this small little city in Georgia. And then he has the federal government coming into town, and he's up against us all of a sudden. And when I think about that conversation and where we are today, it just brings tears to my eyes. I mean, this is a man who cares deeply about his community. And, you know, it really reaffirms my sincere belief that one person can make a difference and everybody should try.
Well, we've got another example of that today. If folks are looking for good news this week, we have more on this front, because while communities like Social Circle are still fighting with lawsuits and these actions to stop those new detention facilities from opening, one of the most high-profile ICE detention sites in the country may suddenly be headed toward closure, with news this week that Alligator Alcatraz in Florida is on the chopping block. As we discovered on Tuesday, the New York Times reported that contractors working at the Everglades facility were reportedly told that detainees could begin being transferred out by the start of June as the facility prepares to wind down operations. Now, the report says the site has become enormously expensive to operate, costing Florida more than $1 million a day, while the state still waits on hundreds of millions in federal reimbursement requests. But tonight, there also appears to be growing confusion over whether the facility is actually shutting down. Take a look and we'll talk about it on the back end.
Closure, confusion. In an exclusive interview, Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin skirted questions about the closure of this immigration detention facility known as Alligator Alcatraz. Take a listen here.
Well, I don't think we've said we're shutting it down.
Oh,
That's not been an announcement we've made. But we do understand there's vulnerabilities there. It's a soft-sided facility. Right now, we have fires that are within 20 miles of it. It's, you know, we all know that Florida is pretty susceptible to hurricanes. So I could see where, you know, we may run into a place where we may have to, but we have not made any announcement we're shutting Alligator.
So just to offer
Alcatraz
clarity, there are no near-term plans to close Alligator Alcatraz.
We have plans in case of a natural emergency, such as a wildfire or a hurricane, to have to be able to bring it down and pull the individuals out. But there's need for us to be able to flex when we have a big influx.
And those comments come after multiple lawmakers told 10 Investigates they recently got calls from 2 U.S. congressmen saying the facility will be closing soon, and for good. Representative Ana Escamani is one of those lawmakers and told us vendors for the facility received notice of the site's looming closure. So far, Governor Ron DeSantis has not directly said the site is closing, but recently reiterated the detention center was always a temporary facility.
All right, I'm gonna just purely speculate here, Maritza. Here's what I think happened. Having worked in that chain of DHS and with those detention facilities, I think Donald Trump saw the headlines of Alligator Alcatraz closing, and I think he was pissed because this was something he personally wanted. I was one of the first people he said, go get me alligators to police these migrants. And of course, we thought that was ridiculous, that the president wanted us to bring alligators down to the border and keep migrants out with alligators or guard migrants with alligators. This was stupid, draconian, bizarre Middle Ages stuff that he was obsessed with. But he brought in a team that was more than excited to make that happen in Florida. And so I'm sure he saw this thing was shutting down and said, hell no. And that's why you've got the DHS secretary offering conflicting messages. I don't know. What's your read?
Well, I do think that so often in these interviews, the members of the administration are definitely catering to a party of one. And so I think that that's probably pretty spot on. I also think that there's just a hell of a lot of confusion and that they might be on track with something and a plan. And all of a sudden you have the president on Truth Social saying something that totally contradicts what you thought was going to happen. So I think there's just a lot of chaos, Miles, but I also think that could be very well plausible. I mean, who knows? Who knows? I mean, I know you have insight from your time in the White House, but it's anyone's guess as to like what these conversations actually look like, unless one of us gets added to the Signal chat, then we'll have a clear understanding of what's going on.
But here's the thing. As we reported earlier this week, Donald Trump, very famous for not paying his bills, and kind of seems like the Department of Homeland Security has been stiff in the state of Florida on this, and states don't have budgets like this. States don't have $38 billion to blow on detention facilities for the federal government. So it doesn't surprise me at all that even a rock solid MAGA governor like Ron DeSantis would say, we can't keep paying this. So I'll be interested to see what that conflict looks like.
They've had a revolving door of really awful press, too. Really terrible headlines. I mean, human rights abuses left and right out of there. That clip it brought up something for me. He's talking about, oh, well, we have a contingency plan if there's this or that. Well, talk to the parents who lost their kids in the flooding in Texas. Because guess what? Things happen very rapidly. And I, especially as we're seeing the climate change, the effects of climate change that we're seeing with natural disasters. I've been to Florida to cover natural disasters. It's not a pretty sight. So I think it's a whole mess of problems.
For sure it is. And we were going tonight to have someone here to talk about it who's been very familiar with the facility. We were hoping to welcome Representative Maxwell Frost to help us break down exactly what's happening there. But as it turns out, Congress is still voting tonight, and Congressman Frost is currently doing his job on the House floor, which we would like him to do. So we're going to reschedule him and promise to have him back very soon. Now, usually when a guest has to drop at the last minute, our producer, Mercedes, starts stress pacing around the backstage a little bit. That kind of thing happens. Live shows are messy sometimes, but honestly, if there was ever a night for a schedule change, it was this one. And that is because this morning we received some truly incredible news. And I don't think Maritza or I should be the ones to tell it. I think it should come from the woman who helped make this happen, who helped advocate for Alligator Alcatraz to be closed, who was determined to fight this facility and the administration's broader secret prisons plan, and also the love for her family that kept her in this fight. So joining us now is someone we are always honored to welcome back to Defiance Daily, and that is Arianne Betancourt with the Workers' Circle. Arianne, it's great to have you on the program. Now, I want to just remind viewers who maybe weren't with us last time you joined us, you have been helping with the Workers' Circle to hold these vigils outside of Alligator Alcatraz to advocate for the facility to be closed. But your reason for that is very personal. Tell us why.
My father was in Alligator Alcatraz until yesterday. He spent 4.5 months out of the last 6.5 months at that facility. And it took a lot of work and a lot of legal experimentation. And, you know, we were lucky to have Miriam Haskell take the case and fight. And when they partially denied the first habeas, you know, she was just like, we'll file again. And 195 days later, my dad is home. And we get news that the facility is going to be shut down. I get calls that my dad's being released, and then that the facility, you know, that the contractors are saying that their services are being terminated. And it's like, it's a, you know, two birds with one stone kind of situation, because I've spent the last 6 months, as well as the worker circle, as well as Betty Osceola, we have all been working on exposing what's going on at Alligator Alcatraz from all different ends. And what's the best part of all of that is, through the vigils, we all connected, and all the little pieces of information that we were learning, we were able to connect, and we got to have a full idea of how the facility is being operated and how cruelty is the standard.
Arianne, while I'm so happy for you in this news, I also know that you have been through hell, and other families like yours have been through hell. Let me just ask how your dad's doing. How are you guys doing? I'm sure this is just an overwhelming emotional time.
Yeah, he's overwhelmed. He was in there for 6 months. He was detained for 6 months, and I've been advocating for 6 months, from here to Minneapolis to Chicago to DC. I mean, anywhere that I could go and speak out against what, you know, where like families like mine are being subjected to, I showed up. I gave up my entire life, everything that I had worked for a decade, because there was nothing else to do but to fight back. I wasn't going to just sit there and watch them do what they've done to my dad. And this is, you know, he's free, but this is going to be a very long healing process. My dad's extremely shaken up. He's extremely thin and frail. They weren't administering his medications properly. They were giving him sleeping medications during the day. I mean, he's slurring his words. He's really nervous. He's really shaky. You know, he can't even express what's going on in there. The only thing he keeps saying is, you know, I left a lot of guys there who need help, who needed more help than I did.
Well, I do have to say, Arianne, oh, go ahead.
And, you know, I know a lot of people in my situation would say, okay, you know, your dad's free. Like, your job here is done, but it's not. There's still 1,400 people inside of Alligator Alcatraz that are being denied due process, whose human rights are being violated, who are being subjected to levels of inhumanity and cruelty that go against all guidelines of human rights.
Well, I do have to say, for our viewers who don't know and didn't hear us tell this story last time, I have to laud you for your commitment in this fight, because I saw firsthand how much you were doing. I was there in Washington, D.C. when you came all the way up from Florida to come to an event that was being held during the night of the State of the Union. We held an event at the National Press Club called State of the Swamp as a rebuttal to Donald Trump. And you were there to advocate to whoever would listen, members of Congress, current and former officials, for this facility to be closed. And I remember thinking in that moment, these are the types of folks who are going to turn the tide, the people who will not stop in this fight to bring attention to these abuses of power. Tell us, Arianne, what's next for you and the workers' circle on this front? How do you hope that some of the momentum to shut down Alligator Alcatraz and things like your father getting released might lead to other potential victories in this fight? What do you hope comes next? We might have lost Arianne.
Oh.
We have a slight delay there. Yeah, I think we did lose her signal. We'll see if we can get her back there. I got to say, Maritza, a very remarkable story when she first came and told it. And her situation, I think, exemplified what you're seeing with so many families out there who are going through this, who literally don't know why their loved ones have been detained, who are having to file things like these habeas petitions. A habeas petition, for people who don't know, is when you say, hey, judge, we don't even know why our friend or family member is in custody. Arianne's back with us. Arianne, I was just saying before we lost you, what are you hoping comes next in this fight?
Oh,
We might not have your audio.
yeah, we have a bad connection. We'll
work to get her back on this front.
You know, I was saying the same thing, Miles. I mean, when we were talking before the show with Mercedes, and you know, Arianne talked about how she gave up her whole life. Everything just quit because this is all she could do and focus on, and all of the organizing and mobilization and going where she needed to be. And this is obviously just a hero among us, but somebody who's very determined and somehow found the way to do all that. And not every family has the ability to do that. And so for every time I hear a story about Arianne's, you know, someone like Arianne's father, I think about all the people who we don't know about, and all the names that we don't know about, and all the horrors we don't know about. And I have a feeling, based on what she just told us, we're going to find out a lot more in the coming weeks and months about what her father went through, what he saw, and what's still happening there. And, you know, we need to keep a spotlight on this. We need to keep talking about it. We need to keep fighting for the names we know and the names we don't know.
That's right. And just, you know, for folks who may not have followed all the developments in that particular story, there were some very damning allegations that you alluded to, Maritza, from organizations like Amnesty International, who said the conditions at Alligator Alcatraz were tantamount to torture. And I want to make clear, folks, that is no accident. As you heard from Arianne Betancourt, whose father was in that facility, as you've heard from Amnesty International, as you've heard from folks like me, the cruelty is the point. It is the policy from this administration. From the top down, Donald Trump expressed to those of us who were his aides working on these issues that he wanted migrants to be deterred from coming to this country because they would fear the conditions and circumstances we would put them in. That's the president of the United States, okay, that wants to make cruelty a policy to scare people from coming to this country. People, by the way, who tend to be the most excited to join the American experiment of just about anyone you could imagine. And nothing has underscored the tragedy of that more than what happened at Alligator Alcatraz. I think we do have Arianne back. Arianne, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry, my phone overheated.
You're fine. You're fine. And I can understand why your phone overheated, because we were going into some pretty serious territory there. And before we let you go, I just wanted to be able to ask you about what comes next. You're at the Workers' Circle. You've been working with them to not just highlight the abuses at Alligator Alcatraz, but at these facilities around the country. Where do you hope things go from here?
I mean, Alligator Alcatraz is just a start. There are hundreds of detention centers that need to be looked into and need to be shut down. And this is just much bigger than what they're doing now. I mean, we the people demand immigration reform, and we demand accountability for what has happened to our loved ones. Because my dad is free, my dad is home, but my dad is not the same. And I don't know if he'll ever be the same. Because the only thing he can say is that those were the 6 months, the worst 6 months of his life. And he won't elaborate further.
I'm so sorry to hear that, but I do have, go ahead.
Yes. And, you know, just people need to really come together, mobilize, organize, show up, Go on freedomvigils.org, find a vigil near you, network with locals who are like-minded and have the same ideas, and come together and start. Even if you start small, it's about showing up and being consistent. For 42 weeks, the vigils have been going, and for 42 weeks, people have shown up. And for 42 weeks, there has been resistance and opposition, and there have been people standing in solidarity with the humanity of every single person in there.
Arianne, thank you so much for your leadership on this and just not backing down and continuing the fight. And please let us know how we can continue to help as more comes to light. And we're sending, just so much love to you and your family right now. I can't imagine what comes next for you guys.
Well, and I got a piece of good news for you, Arianne, because we get to tell you exclusively tonight that the very first action that the project we started, GTFO ICE, is going to take is the nearly 20,000 people who've signed up to be a part of that rapid response network are going to hear this week that their first marching orders are to join you all by starting vigils around the country. So this week, we're going to say to that community, go to freedomvigils.org, work with you all to get more of these vigils in more places. And we couldn't be more delighted to say that publicly for the first time than with you here on the program. So you all have inspired us. You personally have inspired us. And we're going to take the GTFO ICE network and make sure they help expand those vigils around the country. And I think Maritza and myself and Xander are planning to come stand with you at one of those in the very near future. So we're going to try to make that happen soon.
That sounds great. This is what it's about. It's about coming together and finding ways to help as many people as possible. My mission right now is the same as my dad's. He left people back there that need help, and we're going to help them. And it's going to take a lot, but families need to know that there are options. If your bond is denied, file a habeas. Your habeas gets denied, file again. Do not let them break you. Do not let them coerce you into self-deporting. Do not let them force you to give up your life. Fight back, because this is an administration. This is temporary. And people will have to be accountable for what has been done in this country.
Arianne Betancourt of the Workers' Circle and an advocate for immigration reform. Arianne, thank you so much. Congratulations to your family. I know it's a hard road ahead, but we're going to be thinking about you all, and we look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you. I will say, Maritza, despite obviously that long road that they have, things like this, stories like Eric Taylor, stories like Arianne Betancourt, this is real. This is happening. This is what defiance looks like in this country when people start pushing back. These guys can't shut us up forever. They can't put duct tape over our mouths and force people into secret warehouses without folks having something to say about that. And the folks who have been saying something have been making a pretty damn serious dent on these issues.
It's just remarkable. And, I'm sitting here listening to Eric Taylor, listening to Arianne, and seeing across the bottom of our screen Defiance Daily. And what two better people to come on today and talk to us about, like I said, one person can make a difference. And these are the stories that we, our ancestors will be reading about when they read about this period in time and how we got out of it. And I just, like we said, the road ahead is going to be hard for her family, but I'm so glad her dad is home.
Indeed. And I will say, normally, Maritza, we end the program, which we will today, with our usual segment, Who is Joining the Defiance? But I kind of feel like we already had three spectacular answers today. We've got the Inspector General at the Department of Homeland Security, who's joining the defiance and pushing back against the obvious corruption in these secret prisons programs. We've got Eric Taylor down there in Social Circle, Georgia, who's literally shutting off the water to keep these things from opening. We've got Arianne Betancourt, who traveled all around the country to advocate for the closure of these facilities, might have gotten close to helping to secure the closure of one of those facilities, and now has her father home out of detention. But it doesn't stop there, because we have someone else who's joining the defiance, which is one of our favorite pastimes, and that's scrolling TikTok for recipes. Now, you may think, okay, wait, where are you even going with this, Miles? Who's joining the defiance by scrolling for recipes? That might not be everyone's pastime. It certainly is for our producer. But if you have something to break up the constant doom scrolling, it's helpful. Now, oftentimes, those creators, they keep politics out, right, of their TikTok recipes. I mean, what does cooking have to do with Trump? Turns out a lot, at least according to this creator.
Just shut up and cook, they say. We don't want to hear your politics. Well, folks, there is nothing I would like more than to share amazing recipes and talk about little else. But as long as good people need a reassuring word, you're going to hear about it. And as long as the people making decisions about your family's lives are too inept, too corrupt, and too drunk to do their jobs, you're going to hear about it. And as long as we are raising sons and daughters in a world where a website with millions of monthly visits teaches men that women aren't people, you're going to hear about it. And as long as the places that taught us how to think are being defunded for embracing diversity, you're going to hear about it. As long as a masked secret police force can kill people in our streets with impunity, you're going to hear about it. And as long as a parent has to choose between their kid's medication and the electric bill, you're going to hear about it. And as long as the rule of law means one thing for us and something else entirely for the people in charge, you're going to hear about it. As long as I get the question, what can we do about this? You're going to hear about it. Believe me, I'd love for this to be only a recipe for the most amazing tzatziki chickpea salad you've ever tasted in your life. But as long as we're fighting for democracy, this is also a recipe for resistance. Be kind, and you know.
That's too good.
Oh
For people who
gosh.
listen audio only, you missed him making this delicious what was it, a pita?
It says tzatziki. It's Greek.
Oh, tzatziki.
Come
Yeah,
on.
it was
Greek.
I mean, it looked delicious as he was spelling that out. I love that. So, by the way, that creator on TikTok is The Dad Briefs. That's who that is. And I'd be curious to ask our producer how many views that's had so far. I hope that thing has been taken off. But The Dad Briefs is the creator.
Yeah, he's amazing. I love his videos. A lot of my friends share his videos. I love it because, I mean, also I'm hungry, but and Mercedes chose a video where he's making Greek, something for my Greek pescatarian heart with chickpeas and tzatziki. Like, yes, I would like to eat that. But I mean, amazing. We're seeing so many creative content creators. Really, I see it every single day, a new one. Like, wow, people are incredible. They're incredible.
Yeah. It made me think of a couple of months ago, we featured another who is joining the Defiance, which is a guy who does woodworking, and he teaches a shop class.
Yeah.
And he did a similar version to that where he was like building a cabinet and talking about fighting fascism. It was great. It was great. I love
There's another lady.
Yeah.
She has like a fancy coffee maker, and her videos kept getting taken down. So she'd be like, "Look at my video about my coffee I'm making today." And then in the subtitles, she would be writing all kinds of stuff about what's going on and why she's outraged. But it would like prevent her video from getting taken down because the algorithm wasn't catching on. So.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. Well, we'll take one or two quick questions before we wrap, Maritza, from members of defiance.org who can comment in the chat. Colleen Cummins asks, is there support for those who are being released but suffering from the trauma and the abuse? Maritza, this is a great question. I don't know if you have immediate answers, but I know that there are a lot of organizations out there who've been focused on basically helping people reacclimate to their lives after they're in custody, including after immigration custody.
Yeah, I don't have an immediate answer, and it's a fabulous question, Colleen. I know, my hometown of Minneapolis, there are folks who actually go out and help people who are released get home, because a lot of times they're just being dropped off in the middle of nowhere with none of their stuff, no phones, no nothing. So, I mean, that's like the immediate, but you're so right. There needs to be long-term support. I can't imagine there aren't organizations working on that. I just don't know what they are in this moment, but I will definitely look into it after this.
Well, I'll also add, it's the type of thing that, we would be very interested as an organization in funding. For folks who don't know, every Wednesday we announce efforts that we fund to push back against these abuses of power that we highlight. But, for people who are listening, especially look, from the side of the political spectrum I come from, Maritza, there is a tendency to say, isn't this how it's always been? Aren't Democrats making hay about something in the immigration system that's always been this way? And my answer, having spent a lot of my career in this space, is unequivocally no. What we are seeing right now is unlike anything we've ever seen. And if you need any data point, this week we reported on one of those data points, which is that there have been 10,000 rulings from federal judges against this administration's immigration policies alone in the past year. 10,000 rulings have had to have been issued from 425 different judges, including judges Trump appointed, to say, you guys are breaking the law. You're illegally detaining people. You're detaining people against their rights. You're violating their rights in custody. You must release them. At least 10,000 times that has happened. You want to know how that compares to previous presidents? It blows them out of the water. In their entire terms, in Barack Obama's entire 8-year term, we didn't see numbers like that, let alone in a single year. So no, nothing about this is routine. This is extraordinary.
Those are the ones we know about, right? I mean, those are the ones that we know about where there was an avenue to file lawsuits. I do want to mention too, because Carla's in the chat, and there was also the very, very high profile story out of Montana, diesel mechanic in a tiny little town of Freud, Montana, who's also been locked up, Miles. He was released today also after, because the town fought for him. The town stood up and fought for him and said, no, you're not going to do this. And they raised the money for an immigration attorney to help him get out. So there's a lot of work to do, folks. And yeah, I if you hear of anything specific, let us know so that we can jump on board and help.
For sure. We'll take a final question from Defiance.org founding member Chris Palomino. Chris asks, do you know anything about Midas Touch reporting that Trump has been sending U.S. aircraft into allies' airspace, such as Mexico? The only thing I found is there are allies who have closed their airspace to the United States. So, Chris, here's what I'll say on this front is I don't know if folks who are watching saw the film about 10 years ago called Sicario. It's actually a very great film. Josh Brolin is in it. It's directed by Denis Villeneuve, who's the director that does the Dune films. And it's about an administration, fictional story, that decides to use war on terror tactics to go into Mexico and start ostensibly dismantling the cartels. And what happens to the rule of law when you try to bring warfare to America's doorstep on something that may be a huge law enforcement struggle, but is not definitionally a war, and certainly not the thing that we should be suspending the law and human rights over. And that film was a warning, and I think a very propitious warning. And Chris, I think what we're seeing now in Mexico is that this administration is doing almost exactly that. I mean, recent reporting this week shows that the Central Intelligence Agency has been engaging in covert action inside of Mexico, again, to go after some of these cartels. None of us here are going to play the violin for cartel leaders, but what we are going to say is it's a pretty scary and slippery slope when this administration starts suspending the rule of law, launching secret assassination programs, and it's an extension, I think, Chris, of what we have seen in the Caribbean and the Pacific, where Donald Trump and his administration have murdered more than 200 people rather than arresting them for alleging that they have drugs on their boats. Now, I want to be very clear about this too. I've overseen many of those operations at the Department of Homeland Security, and not once did the United States Coast Guard ever come to me and say, sir, we cannot arrest the people on that boat. We recommend just killing them from the sky, because they knew that that would be illegal. It was never even contemplated. And that, yet now it's the policy of this administration, when they have evidence of a crime, to skip the judge, skip the jury, skip the rule of law, and send a missile in and just murder the people without giving them their day in court. That's not what Americans do. That's not what the rule of law looks like. Yet, Chris, that appears to be a campaign that's now expanding onto Mexican territory. Maritza, I don't know if you have any further inside information on that front, but this seems to be where it's headed.
No, I don't, but I think you raise really good points. The boats in the Caribbean, it's really troubling to me, not only because of the U.S. government deciding they're just going to be the executioner without any trial, like you said, for an offense that I don't think is punishable by death. If indeed that's true, I haven't seen any charging documents either, by the way, but also what precedent does it set for other countries to just start doing that to us? And how are they going to treat Americans? I mean, I think it sets a really, really dangerous, horrific, I mean, like you said, it's murder.
It's murder. And believe me, folks, the investigations will continue on this front. I mean, you remember in the War on Terror, when there were investigations for years into torture, into enhanced interrogation techniques. This makes that pale in comparison, okay? The handful of people who were waterboarded, who were known al-Qaeda operatives, many of whom were found to be planning mass casualty attacks, are entirely different than these cases where we have obvious examples of people who could and should be arrested, and instead we're just killing. I don't even care if you think that that's the thing that should be done to drug dealers. I mean, I do care. But if you actually cared about American security, you don't go annihilate the evidence. Your best evidence to take down these organizations are those operatives. You roll up low-level operatives, those take you to mid-level operatives, then those help you get the high-level operatives to dismantle a network. You don't just kill your best evidence. That's what this administration's doing, among many other abuses of power, and something that is not going to be forgotten when this is all over, Maritza.
I just have a really quick question though. Did you notice anything about me today?
You're wearing a leather jacket.
I'm stealing your look. You stole my neon. You stole my neon sign, so I came looking like Miles today.
I knew this would be a great day for Xander to skip as soon as you rolled in with a leather jacket, because I know he doesn't have a leather jacket, and if he had shown up without one today, we would have just kicked him out of the show. And
on Thursdays, I was going to do Mean Girls thing. On Thursdays, we wear leather, Xander.
That's right. That's right. And I can tell he's salty because apparently Xander's posting in the chat right now. I don't know if it's from the airplane or where. And he posts in the chat, Xander asks, is Miles really 3'5" tall? Oh, Xander. Don't punch, man. Don't punch if you're not here to fight back. All right, man, because everybody knows you're a little tiny guy, and it's just the camera makes you look taller than you actually are. 99% of people watching have never met Xander. He's very little, and that's okay. But he shouldn't be ashamed that I can keep him in my pocket. He's that tiny.
But I thought the whole plan was to make people say that you're a tiny little guy.
That's what he's trying to do. This is what he's trying to do.
He's trying, but he's not here. He's not here.
That ain't me. I'm a tall guy. Well, look, we've got tomorrow is going to be a fun day, Maritza, because it's Friday, which here at Defiance Daily is always a fun day because we will award the Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award to his biggest supplicant of the week. And we will go through the MAGA losses of the week. And we also are going to have two incredible guests. Tomorrow, we will have former CNN Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr with us to break down the latest on the war with Iran. And our friend Latasha Brown, who we're excited to bring back. It's been a beat since y'all have seen her. You saw her at State of the Swamp, and we're excited to talk to her about the latest. So that's tomorrow. Maritza, I know you weren't planning on being with us tomorrow, but I'm not going to be upset if you just crash the party and jump in. So, just let us know how you're feeling towards the end of the day.
Yeah, okay. I'll let you know. I'm on a quick little trip with a girlfriend, but if I,
you're always out there having fun, but you're also willing to come in and join for the news while you're out there on those trips. So I know, because you did it from Hawaii.
Well, the news doesn't stop. This is important. This is important stuff that we got to keep shining a light on. So, we'll be here. We can talk about what's going on from anywhere, right? That's the beauty of the internet when it works. Apparently, I need to leave the state of Montana for my internet connection to be stable, Miles, but we'll work on that.
It's real good today outside of Montana. Well, in the spirit of supporting independent media, I will urge everyone who's listening, if you are not currently following the Grounded podcast on Substack, go check out Grounded with Maritza and former Senator John Tester. It's one of the best listens on the platform, so make sure to follow them and subscribe.
Can I do a quick plug? We have a very special guest in person. The three of us will be in person together this weekend, and that is former Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who is coming to Montana to talk about the Montana Plan, which is this workaround basically to get around Citizens United. Hawaii just passed something similar based on the Montana Plan through their legislature. So we're going to talk all about that with Mayor Pete this weekend on Grounded.
Guys, you have to listen. You have to listen. Mayor Pete is unlike anyone. I'm looking forward to that, my friend, and I'm looking forward to the readout on that next week. In the meantime, folks, just a reminder, join us tomorrow, Fridays on Defiance Daily. We'll be here at 5 p.m. Eastern. And in the meantime, as we always say, stay loud, stay brave, and stay together. We'll see you tomorrow.